Thank you. Item number 11, under business items, results of the special election, and where do we go from here? I will turn that over to you, Joe.
Thank you, Chair. So this item, first and foremost, is for the commission to receive the results of a special election that you ultimately had called for voters in the Julian community to be able to confirm this agency's earlier action to approve a reorganization involving fire and emergency medical services in the community at large. A proposal officially termed as the Julian Cuyamaca Fire Protection District reorganization, an action that involves both the dissolution of the Julian Cuyamaca Fire Protection District and then the authorization for County Fire Service, County Fire Authority to expand its service area to include all of the affected territory and by way of County Service Area 135. And as of last Thursday, the Registrar of Voters did certify the results and showed that voters on a 54-46 split have approved the reorganization. So, Commission, under LAFCO law, you now have certainty that this reorganization will happen. Again, under LAFCO law, this reorganization will happen. First and foremost, that is the results that we are asking for you to formally receive and file today. It also then brings us to next steps, and that is how do we go about implementing this now voter-approved reorganization? And certainly, setting a transfer date is certainly within the explicit domain of LAFCO, and admittedly, under most circumstances, it's something that LAFCO's staff is delegated the responsibility of working out with the applicants and what other affected agencies there may be. But in this particular case, we certainly believe it's prudent to do a check-in with the Commission before we go forward, because as most in this room can attest, this has not been your typical proposal. And among other things, certainly from our vantage point, we have been expending quite a bit of your resources and time, staff's resources, your council's resources, in just trying to maintain the statutory baseline over the last several months, from the time the protest was triggered to get to an election and to get the certified results of that election. We have been spending a lot of your time just trying to keep the baseline going. It's for this and other reasons that we have identified in the agenda report that we come to you today with the conclusion that the sooner this transfer occurs, the better. And certainly our thinking is the day and time that County Fire Authority is ready to assume service responsibilities for the Julian community, that should be the day of the transfer. And as I anticipate shortly, County Fire Authority is going to come to the podium and attest that they are ready to go right now. And so assuming that to be the case, our recommendation is let's set the transfer date to today, April 8th, and let's move forward with the reorganization now that we know that the voters have approved it. So again, part one of this item is for you to formally receive and file the results of the election consistent with election code. And then part two is for you to provide feedback to staff on our recommendation, our conclusion that we should proceed right now with implementing the reorganization. So I know we have representatives from both Julian Cuyamaca Fire Protection District as well as County Fire Authority. It would be appropriate certainly to hear from them. We also have some speakers who would like to address the commission. That too would be appropriate. And ultimately, our recommendation, Chair, is captured as alternative action 1 to your staff report. And certainly staff and council is available to go into details. And one last thing, we did receive one additional supplement to today's meeting, and that is a letter from Attorney Ted Griswold representing land conservancy, am I saying that word right? Conservancy, excuse me, concerning the disposition of property in the Julian Cuyamaca. It's something that we have addressed previously at LAFCO, but Commission Council is certainly ready to go into more detail if the Commission sees fit. Thank you.
Are there any questions of staff from the commissioners? Okay, then I will go, yes? I'll go into the speaker slips. If you would like to address the commission, please put your speaker slip in now. Thank you.
And perhaps hear from the applicants first before we get to the speakers.
I don't have any.
So I think we have
Who would like?
A representative from the Julian Cuyamaca board, if they are here. If not, then a representative from County Fire Authority before we get to general public comments.
That's why I asked for additional speakers. Is there a board member?
The board's been asked not to speak. No. No. Here's a lawyer.
Good morning, I'm Corey Briggs, I'm the attorney for the district. The proceeding you have before you has no legal weight anymore. Last Friday, the Superior Court voided the resolution of the district that began this process and all associated actions. In other words, the application that was submitted by the district is as if it had never been submitted at all. You have zero legal authority to do what we're proposing to do today. A lawsuit's being filed this morning to have that conclusively determined as to LAFCO. If you proceed, I suspect we'll end up in court in the next couple of days on some sort of TRO or injunction. Even if it weren't void, conditions that you put before the voters have not been satisfied. You told the voters that the district had to negotiate another interim ambulance contract. That hasn't happened. And you gave that to the district. Your staff report today says that's something that you can wave your hands at and make go away as a matter of discretion. That's not what you told the voters. In addition, you told the voters that the district was going to dispose of the Cuyamaca fire station. That hasn't happened yet. You don't get to wave your hands and make that go away. The district has to do that. So I don't understand what the rush is. Furthermore, as you know from the letter from Ted Griswold, if the district is dissolved, the property actually reverts back to the Conservancy, and nobody else has any authority to enter the premises. You would be trespassing, you would be committing a takings, and because that's a unique circumstance, you are in effect leaving that community without lawful fire service. That triggers a secret review. I have copies of the judgment and the writ that were entered. I have an unsigned copy of the resolution that the board adopted last Saturday in response to the judge's writ rescinding it. I'm just representing to you that it was all rescinded. I just don't have the signed copy with me at the moment. You will need to decide what you want to do. I'm happy to talk up the council, but my recommendation is that you not be cowboys and move forward with this today while things are at best in legal limbo. And as I said earlier, because of the Brown Act violation that procured the application, there's no application whatsoever. That has been decided in a case called Hernandez versus Town of Apple Valley. It's from our very own 4th District Court of Appeal. In that case, the Court of Appeal invalidated election results when the election was procured through a Brown Act violation. So rather than exposing everybody to a bunch of legal liability, I would encourage you not to move forward today. Let's get the lawyers in the room. Let's get all of this sorted out. Do it professionally. Do it responsibly. Let's not leave everybody in limbo. Let's not be cowboys. Let's do it the way San Diegans deserve. If you would like copies of those documents, I have them here. Who do I give them to?
Would you please give a copy of those documents and you'll pass them on?
Sure.
To our
There's
council?
just one copy.
Okay. Did you have anyone have questions of the speaker? No questions, thank you. Our next speaker is Jacqueline Egan Berry.
Yes, you were saying that it was the best interest for CAL FIRE to take over. And I'm telling you today, it is not the best interest of Julian for that to happen, because on 4/14 of 19, that's April 4th, there was a medical call to Pine Hills, and CAL FIRE got lost. They couldn't find it, and JCFPD was already there working on the patient. So there are multiple incidences of them not being able to find locations. Even the only doctor's office in Julian on Main Street, they could not find it. This is a problem, and this is not the best interest of Julian. I believe 95% of all the calls are medical calls, not fire. And you would be leaving our community in a dire situation. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there a representative from CAL FIRE? I don't have a speaker slip here. Would you like to come to the podium? Because I have an idea if I was going to be similar, so maybe you can address some of the comments that have been made.
Yes. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm also joined by the Office of County Counsel. I'll defer any questions on the legal of the County Council. In March of 2018, the publicly elected Board of Directors of the Julian Cuyamaca Fire Protection District voted to file an application for dissolution and concurrent expansion of the latent powers of CSA 135. In April 19th, LAFCO staff received this application, and in May of 2018, this LAFCO Commission voted unanimously to accept the dissolution request. In September, that request was subsequently approved unanimously by the San Diego County Board of Supervisors, who also submitted our joint application. In September, the Commission voted to accept both the county and Julian's application. On October 16th of this year, a protest hearing was held. They did receive 26% of the voters, which triggered an election. On April 4th, the County Register of Voters certified the election results at 54 to 46% in favor of joining the county. The county has fulfilled all of the terms and conditions required for dissolution, and after 11 years, we are ready to proceed immediately with services. The publicly elected Board of Directors has made a decision to file an application that was subsequently confirmed by the voters. So the residents of Julian have spoken twice, once through their elected board and a second time through a public election. I ask that you support staff recommendation number 1, and both myself and County Council are available for questions. Thank you.
Other questions? No question. I have 2 more speaker slips. Be Ken Rice.
And justice for all. I love those words. My name is Ken Rice. I've been a member of the County Fire Authority since inception in 2008, starting out in Duluth. Worked my way up to Palomar to get additional training, more call volume. Served often at San Pasquale, since they were giving classes to allow us to continue working our way up the ladder. And I got used to being ramrodded every July when the new contract would come up, being told I need this certification, that certification, or I can't drive the engine that I've been driving for several years anymore. I continue to jump through the hoops, miss work, probably hundreds of thousands of dollars of work to continue to stay qualified to be part of the county system. I believe in the county system. It was created to unite us, get us better communication, get us more water tenders coming to these fires, get me more training, get me more certification, allow me to work better with CAL FIRE. I love my CAL FIRE instructors, my trainers. I love seeing their planes coming. I'm a little disappointed to see DC-10s flying in to put out fires that my volunteer station could have put out a half a mile away from my station, costing us millions of dollars. Highway 78 has been closed 3 times this year because of fires that could have been put out by the men and women that were there to stop those fires. And now help isn't coming from a half hour away. This program was created to build us up, not leave empty, brand new buildings. It was created to get me more certifications and me to understand who my commanders are. When CAL FIRE comes on scene and takes over incident command, I'm glad they're there. But if I can get there a half hour sooner, I'm gonna save a life. I'm gonna keep a fire under 10 acres for you. And this is being taken away. This has been turned into a dissolve process. I'm sick and tired of it. I went up to Julian last February to donate them my gear because I was supporting them. I had to listen to the lie and the speech one more time. We want your members to be part of the system. They did everything they can to chase me out of the system. They took away our $5,000 a year tobacco money fee that was made to help me pay for my certifications, a new shirt and hat once in a while. That money was taken away, given to CAL FIRE, and I'm going to go beyond my time. I've been serving you since 2008, and you're going to hear me, by the way.
Thank you.
No? Well, thank you for allowing me to keep going, but I'm going to keep going. You're not going to get me out of here.
I think, can you please wrap it up in a minute? We have other.
I will shorten it up a little bit now, but the men
I'll give you 1 more minute, please.
The men of Julian have held their tongues, and their women and citizens have had to speak up for them so that they could take the higher ground. But the union has subverted the entire county system, and there were police at the Julian fire station this morning ready to force them out. Before, you say you're going to try to speed this up? They tried to speed it up this morning. There were armed officers trying to take over the fire station this morning. I want you to know that. That's how the citizens of Julian are being treated right now. And the experienced men. And the union has put on classes last minute saying, oh, we'll certify you, but they fill up the classes with their own guys to make it so I wouldn't have a seat in these classes. The union is doing everything it can to get themselves overtime at your expense, our expense. As much as I love CAL FIRE, the truth needs to be spoken. Millions of dollars have been spent, wasted, and you have never dealt with us in good faith. There was no plan to bring in our men and create a unity, and it's been a lie, a bait and switch from day one. And I'd love to speak for 10 more minutes, but I'm going to honor you better than you've honored the men and women of Julian.
Thank you, sir. Our last speaker is Lori Foss.
Hi, everybody. It's really hard to follow that. Okay, I am concerned. Okay.
Maybe let me help you
Oh,
here.
sure.
Can you keep your comments to those in addition to what has been said rather than go ahead and repeating?
Yes, ma'am. Everything I'm saying is in addition to. Okay, last night there was a medical call. CAL FIRE got lost. They were heading into Pine Hills. The emergency was in Hisey Park. The call came in at 6:52. They were still driving around my neighborhood 12 minutes away from Hisey Park at 7:23 in the evening, looking for the scene of the emergency. Now, this is what we're facing in Julian. This is what we've warned about. These are not the same services as promised in the contract. They are not even like or similar. These are dangerous conditions. CAL FIRE does not know how to get to us, and somebody is going to die. And you need to do something about that. These are not same services as stated in the contract. And then also, too, let me read my notes here. Regarding the election, so far going through B and O, up to B and O, we found 12 people who fraudulently voted in our election. And we are going through the list and we are going to nail every single person who voted fraudulently. We have one person from La Jolla who doesn't even live in Julian, never lived in Julian, lived on Eves and is now on Caminita Amica in La Jolla. Never lived in Julian. No one knows it. We're getting people from North Carolina voting in our, Fallbrook, voting in our election. I don't know how anyone can certify an election when people who don't even live there are voting in our election. And I'm going to go through that list and I'm going to find every single one of them. And I'm going to make sure that they are prosecuted. Because this is life and death for our community. And we have brought this up. We've brought this up to Chief Meacham regarding a specific July the 6th of 2017. There was a medical call to Camp Marston where we all sent our children. And what this child had was an anaphylactic shock. His driver stated after 28 minutes, good luck, we can't find you. He stated it never happened. We received a redacted, chopped up version of the audio recording. And he said it never happened. And then he stated in his own email that this happened, well, you know, for a call on Pine Ridge Avenue, Pine Ridge Way. First of all, Camp Marston is on Pine Hills Road, not Pine Ridge. And that was from the chief of CAL FIRE to me. So if he can't even find it and has no idea where it is and what we're talking about, how the heck, and they transfer and promote their people every 6 months. It's difficult for those who've lived there for many years to know how to get around. You are putting people's lives at risk, and someone is going to die. And every single one of you who doesn't do something to protect us and our tourists, sometimes the only thing available is a landmark. And our people are going to know what that is. And this person canceled the ambulance contract, or the ambulance contract effective Friday for our community. And already we've had an emergency where they can't find it. Now our people are the one, we need to have that reinstated immediately while this is being sorted out. Because everyone who dies, everyone here is going to be held responsible. Because you know about it, and you've all known about it. And that's it.
Thank you. At this time, any discussion from the commission? Mr. Jacob?
Well, Madam Chair, I think we have some questions that need to be answered. There's the allegation of voter fraud. I would ask if there's any evidence of that today to please submit that to us. And then Mr. Briggs indicated some legal issues, so I think we need to hear from our attorney and where we are on this.
Sure. If there are any allegations of voter fraud, there are statutory remedies available, and they would need to bring those forward according to those remedies. That's not something that the commission itself has discretion to handle. That's something that they would need to take it to the court to have that addressed. As for the
Well, before you go on, so let's say that plays out in the court and it has an effect on the outcome of the election. So then where are we?
For there to change the outcome of the election, they would have to establish that the votes that they were challenging were sufficient to change the outcome of the election. So 12 votes, my understanding, we're over 100 votes, a spread between confirming the dissolution and opposing the dissolution. So a switch of 12 votes would not affect the outcome.
Now, have you had a chance to review the documents that Mr. Briggs presented today?
Yes, just briefly. And at this point, I don't see any reason to delay. I don't believe those documents present a reason for LAFCO to delay. It's plain that they intend to file some action and then a court can resolve the dispute back and forth. But I don't see a reason as we sit here right now for LAFCO to delay based on those documents.
So if LAFCO were to go ahead with the recommendation of our executive director today, and then this goes to court and there's a temporary restraining order or whatever, what does that do then to the fire and emergency medical services in the Julian Cuyamaca Fire District? I mean, where are we on that? Chief?
So fire services would remain in place with the County Fire Authority and CAL FIRE. The Cuyamaca Station 51 is staffed today with 3 people. And we have a total of 6 personnel on at the Julian Station, 3 on the paramedic engine and 3 on the CAL FIRE engine, along with the battalion chief on duty. So essentially, the fire services that have been in place as part of and up to and leading to the dissolution are in place today, so there would be no disruption in services. The ambulance agreement changed last Friday from the Julian Fire Protection District to the county's contracted provider, Mercy Medical Transportation. They currently have a paramedic ambulance staffed on duty today in Julian, concurrent with the contract that they have with the County Emergency Medical Services Agency.
Would you care to respond to the allegations by a couple of the speakers?
The previous ones from 2017, we have responded to several times. The ones that were brought up from last night, I have no reason to believe, none of this was brought to my attention, to my staff, so I would have to go back and look. As you know, all of our vehicles have automatic vehicle locators. It is all tracked through satellite technology. The times are recorded. I would be glad to go back and look at any specific, whether it's today or any time, any allegation that our staff has not gotten lost, because we have very, very detailed records on those.
Thank you. So as we sit here today, the LAFCO process has been followed. The legal issues our attorney says are separate would be played out in court. Is that correct?
Yes.
And my biggest concern is about the service, both fire and medical service to the people of Julian, and then people in the region that visit Julian, and that's a good thing. I remember the last time those that were in opposition came down, you asked for a vote. And you got a vote. And the vote may not have turned out the way you wanted it to turn out, but all those who were registered voters in Julian had a chance to vote, and we have the results today. So I would defer to my colleagues and on this issue as we sit here today, and our executive director as to where we want to go from here.
Other comments, Commissioner Desmond?
Yeah, I just have a question on, I guess I'd like our council or county council, somebody to talk about this land conservancy letter we got, talking about the land, supposed to transfer into some other entity from the Copia.
Yes, I don't know if county council may want to add to this, but we had looked at this when it originally came up before LAFCO approved the reorganization back in September of last year. And the right of reverter, California law has abolished the right of reverter. They now, if somebody has reserved that right, they have to file an action to terminate that deed. In this case, we believe there are actually some statutory exemptions to that right that would apply here to prevent them exercising that right of reverter. So we don't believe that their claim is valid, but that would be something that the county would need to address once this is recorded with the county.
Okay. I guess I have a question for the chief.
No one allowed a response to the chief. I'd like to respond.
No, hey, you know what? I'm sorry. Yeah, sure. Chief, come on up. Thanks. So, all right, we've got some very passionate people from Julian and Julian Fire Department that are, very passionate about the community and want to make sure the community is protected. Are we allowing any sort of, I don't know if you have a transfer of people or you're allowing them to apply for these jobs? To me, it makes sense if that would be that might be an appropriate thing to do, as long as it's, they're doing the best for the community. Is there any sort of transfer of jobs?
So there's actually
opportunities.
Yes, sir. So there was two elements in the terms and conditions. We're required to take over all of the Julian Cuyamaca Fire Protection District volunteer and reserve firefighters who choose to submit an application to the county. So going back to June of last year, when our paramedic engine was actually at the Julian station, we started that transition. We transferred over approximately 16 of their volunteers. We also held classes specifically in Julian, for example, to get the emergency medical services requirements up to the minimum standards of Title 22. So we held those classes in Julian. We opened that application period up. When our fire engine moved out of the facility, those reserves came with us over to the CAL FIRE facility. As of April 1st through April 15th, we have reopened the application period back up for the JCFPD volunteers. As of Friday, we have had 11 of their volunteers fill out applications to come over to the county. We have waived what has historically been a much higher training standard, and to keep it very simple, the highest level of training to be able to go into a burning building. We now will accept any of them as reserves, allow them to ride along. We put workplace restrictions until we get them to our legally required training. Specifically, the ambulance personnel were required by the county EMS contract to be given an opportunity to interview with Mercy Medical Services And I know as of last Friday, 5 of the 6 ambulance personnel had already gone through the interview with Mercy Medical. I have said repeatedly, and I will continue to say again, even the people that are the most passionate and against this, that have served their community for many years, I want them to become part of the fire authority. But at the end of the day, they have to choose to fill out the application and come be a part of our system, and they're all welcome to be a part of our organization.
Well, I hear there's a lot of applications, and how many have you hired?
All of them. So with the county, there's several requirements that you have to go through.
That's good enough.
You have to pass a background and a basic medical. So we're waiting on those, the results of the background and the medical. If they pass those 2 items, they automatically on board with us.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, I have a clarification. According to my numbers, if you had 16 that transferred in back in 18, 11 in this month, that's only 27, but if I remember rightly, there's 80-some volunteers. But you just said all of them were on board.
So they have recently brought on quite a few new volunteers. We've not been provided those names. We have forwarded the paperwork to apply to the county. And again, I need to stress that they have to fill out the application to come over to the county. So if there's 80 of them there, I would love to see 80 applications come in. As of Friday, when I last checked, we had only received 11 applications since we opened the applications on April 1st. That application period will continue through April 15th. So it's really incumbent on the individual volunteer to make a decision. Do they want to come over and serve as a reserve firefighter for the county fire authority? And that's a personal decision, but that opportunity is there.
So do they have the ability then to become a full-time on CAL FIRE? Can they go from reserve to full-time?
They would have to test. So reserve firefighters are a slightly different classification. They receive a stipend payment for their services. Full-time employment is a civil service job, so you have to go through, like any government public agency, you have to fill out an application and go through a competitive civil service process. We do tend to see quite a few reserves because of their training and their background that tend to do well, not only on CAL FIRE's, but all of our fire departments in the county. They tend to do very well in those exams.
Okay. So then those 16 that have been transferred out, are they going to be then transferred back? So you'll have at least, as of today, a minimum of 26 Julian residents serving in that fire station?
Yeah, the 16 that came over in that June to December period are still serving in Julian. I was at the Julian R station Friday night, and we had 2 county reserves that were originally JCFPD reserves riding on our engine. We had our engine was staffed with about 5 people on Friday. So that was one of the conditions that we brought, is that any of the Julian volunteer reserves that come into the fire authority, we will continue to house them in Julian unless they decide that they want to go somewhere else in the county. If they live in Vista, they may want to go right out in the Deer Springs area. That, again, that's up to the individual, but we are not going to move any community unless they request to transfer to another station.
Okay. Any, Mark?
Thank you. Just a couple of questions about the election itself. Was the election held among property owners or registered voters?
It was a registered voter election.
Okay, thank you. And then it says when you read the description of the item that should voters disapprove the reorganization of your terminated, obviously, and it says should voters approve it, it will be ordered. It sounds to me, based on that description, like what we're talking about here today is ministerial, i.e. the voters have spoken, we don't have much discretion. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
In terms of filing the completion, that's correct.
Okay. Well, given that, I would make a motion to approve staff recommendation because I don't believe we have a choice in this matter. The voters have spoken.
I have a motion. Is there a second? I have a second from Commissioner Vanderlyn.
It's illegal.
Any other comments from the Commissioner?
People die.
The only question on the motion, so what would be the effective date?
It would be today. Staff, if you go through the motion, staff will record today.
You're gonna bring guns up there today. They were already there this morning.
Thereafter.
Would you add that to your motion? It
It's
would be
illegal.
effective as of today.
Court order. Yeah, that's fine. Effective as of today, that's fine.
It's breaking a court order.
Yes, Commissioner Wells.
I'd like to ask a question, which is kind of a statement. no matter what we would do here today, it wouldn't affect the pending lawsuit that's coming, right? If the voters, the people here today want to file a lawsuit, they can file a lawsuit whether we pass this through to the next phase or hold it back. Is that correct?
It would depend on what they're challenging.
We're gonna make them look bad.
I mean, if the commission took no action today, they probably would wait until we did file the certificate of completion and it was recorded. So, yeah, whether it happens today or tomorrow, they would file an
It seems to
action.
me that this is going to be decided out of our hands. It's going to be decided in a court of law. I just assume push it on to that level and let justice be done one way or the other.
Question.
Yeah.
If the commission moves ahead today and it takes effect today, and I understand it, take over the fire station, is that correct, and other assets?
With guns.
Is that how it works? Okay. So, doing that, that means that the current volunteer station would be vacated, is that right?
I apologize, could you repeat the
The
question?
current volunteer station is now staffed by the volunteers. On this action, would that station be vacated?
All assets and liabilities transfer to the county fire authority. County fire authority would assume all possession, so it would be the county fire authority's building at that point, not the volunteers.
Theft.
So are we setting the CAL FIRE up for something here, or does our legal standing that we went through all the process and the vote has been taken exempt them or keep them out of the fray? Does that make any sense?
Well, this is going to, the voters have spoken, as Commissioner Kersey had mentioned, we are now in a ministerial phase in which this will happen. The question staff was bringing to you today was, are you comfortable with my recommendation as your director that this should happen now? That there's no benefit ultimately to waiting any longer for the voters' inevitable transfer. So I guess the way to answer it is County Fire Authority is a joint applicant to this. They are on board and they have attested they are ready to assume operations right now.
Okay, thank you. Holly, do you have any comments on that?
No, I just echo that. That's.
Yeah, well, the mechanics of it are this. Yes, there were already people on site to take over the station and move out the equipment and all of that. Okay, so that's done. And so in the meantime, County Fire provides all the services, is that correct? Do we have anything set up, or do we need to think about at this point that there may be some pushback on the part of some of the people that are here wanting to reopen that station? Do we need to think about any safeguards there, or we just let it happen?
Chief Mitchell, did you want to address that? I think it's a little bit out of our EO's purview here.
So again, our intent has always been to continue Station 56 with the career staffing and the ambulance. We have not been in that building and since we left in December. So part of our transition is staff is going to get into the facility. We need to evaluate the IT infrastructure, the security infrastructure, a few of those things. And once we are up, that could be 2 days or it could be 2 weeks. Once County Department of General Services has said the building is ready to go and our IT department is there and we have all of the connectivity that we need, we will be moving the paramedic and the engine back into that fire station. So I can't give you an exact timeline because until we get in and do an assessment of the building, we're not sure specific things, but I would estimate it won't take us more than 7 to 10 days. We do have contractors ready to go today. We're ready to move forward.
So then 2 stations will be functioning, is that correct?
All 3. So both CAL FIRE stations, the county is funding the winter agreement to keep the 2 CAL FIRE stations open year round. And then the 3rd station, which is the district station, is where we will run the paramedic engine and the Mercy paramedic ambulance out.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chief, Sam. I just have a follow-up question, because I'm getting a little confused on the timing. You said 7 to 10 days, and are you, if we take this action today, are you confident, and I just want to get this for the record, are you confident that you can provide the fire and medical services that Julian, the community of Julian, the Julian Fire District needs, and you'll be able to keep the same level of service that's there today?
Unequivocally, yes.
Any other questions of Chief while he's up here? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. I have a motion and a second.
I have a question for the commission on behalf of the district.
Quickly.
Yeah. What do you get pushing forward today that you don't get, putting it off a week, it's not ministerial, Mark. Your staff report says that you have options today. You can postpone this for a week. So it's not the case that your hands have been tied. What do you get out of this, Harry and Serge, for rushing this forward and not letting the court play out? Right? You have to assume that everything you've been told here by the folks pushing this is going to play out exactly right. You had the sheriff trying to throw people out an hour before this meeting, and I'm guessing that most, if not all of you, didn't know that. That means that something else is going on here. What do you get other than potential problems that will be range from big to small for not postponing this for a week, to let the lawyers see if they can't sort it out in a way that doesn't have a bunch of blowback and, God forbid, doesn't have somebody dead? What do you get out of it? That the voters have spoken? Go read Hernandez versus Town of Apple Valley. The voters spoke there overwhelmingly by a much bigger margin. The court threw out the results of that election because the election itself was illegal because procured by a Brown Act violation. You got a Brown Act violation, the judge has already spoken. So what do you get changing the status quo for a week? Ask yourself that. And make sure that you have that answer etched permanently in your mind. So that if, God forbid, we have to revisit this issue in a few weeks, you remember what you were thinking when you took the recommendation of your executive director to rush this thing through.
Holly, do you want to have any additional comments that we need to be advised of?
No, I think you have before you the choices, and this likely is going to end up before the courts no matter what. And so I just don't see any reason to delay for legal purposes.
Humanitarian.
Okay, call for roll call. We have a motion and a second, roll call.
Commissioner Blakesler is absent. Commissioner Desmond?
Yes.
Commissioner Jacob?
Aye.
Commissioner Kersey?
Aye.
Commissioner McKenzie?
Aye.
Commissioner Sprague?
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderlyn?
Aye.
Commissioner Wells?
Yes.
Commissioner Dedina?
Yes.
You have 8 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 absent. The motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on. We have a funner agenda item next. Item number 12 is the draft municipal service review on the Julian region. This is a draft and a very comprehensive draft. I don't think I've seen one this comprehensive for a long time. So, you're on.
I'm going to offer up a few introductory comments, and I'm going to hand this off to your analyst, Linda Zambito, who's been project manager on this. But before the commission, you do have this draft municipal service review on the Julian region, which has been prepared entirely in-house and done so by way of your adopted work plan. And it's part, commission, of this new reality for LAFCOs to be in the business of preparing what I would refer to as kind of these regular independent check-ins on the availability and adequacy of local governmental services, all as it relates to your broader growth management responsibilities under state law. And certainly part of the document's core function is for you to weigh in ultimately and make determinations on certain core growth management issues as prescribed by the state. That means you are ultimately seeing a document that weighs in from the LAFCO perspective on growth and population projections, infrastructure needs or deficiencies, financial standing, and perhaps the most pertinent to the world of LAFCO, this is the document LAFCOs use to weigh in on the issue of whether alternative government structure options make sense. And I think we'll hear from Linda in a little bit about that as well. And it all goes into the bigger function of informing your regulatory and planning functions. And explicitly, out of this document and documents to come, we take this information to meet your directive to update spheres of influence for all 100 or so local agencies every 5 years. So broadly, that's the draft and its purpose. As Linda will detail, this is specific to the Julian region and includes 6 entities that are directly under your responsibility. And that happens to include, as of right now and before we record our dissolution paperwork, the Julian Cuyamaca Fire Protection District. And I wanted, Chair, just to quickly address why we've included the district in our report. And there's 2 reasons. First and foremost, up until, again, we record the dissolution, it's an active district under your watch. And if for no other reason than that, we need to document service levels, which we will inevitably come back to in 5 years when we're looking at the County Fire Authority and CSA 135. And then, as Council has alluded to, it also serves as a fail-safe for LAFCO, okay? Given that we have a municipal service review on record, should, for whatever reason, the courts decide to unwind the dissolution that you just went ahead and ordered today. And there's particular purpose to that comment that I'll let Linda touch upon, and I may come back to as well. But there is value and purpose as to why Julian Cuyamaca Fire is in this document. So, as the chair alluded to, this is the first municipal service review your staff has brought to you in a year or 2, so it looks a little different. You have new staff. Part of this discussion is your take on this approach. If there's changes going forward, we can certainly make those. But I'm going to hand this off to Linda to go over the key conclusions and recommendations, and we're looking for feedback. Thank you. Linda.
Okay, good morning, Commission. Thank you. I'm excited to offer up the first municipal service review draft of the next 5 years and over the 100 agencies we'll be touching on. This has been a culmination of many, many months and lots of personal visits to all the districts, with exception to 2 water districts that I've had phone calls and email exchanges with. But progressing to how I'll break this down, this very large document in this brief time, I'll be explaining this is the macro overview of the 6 profiles that Keene has mentioned. The study period lasts from 2014 to 2018, the last 5 years, and really focuses on 3 sections: demographics, services provided, and financial health. Here we have a map of our geographical boundaries with all 6 agencies. All 6 agencies were really created between the 1960s and the 1990s. They were successor agencies from previous either private organizations or other agencies that weren't seen to be meeting the services, and landowners and voters okayed these new successor agencies, A little bit of a demographic background of this area. In geographic size, it is comparable to Vista, San Marcos, and Oceanside combined. It is 1/5, growing slowly than the county, and the median age is 46 versus 33 in the county. And 33% collect retirement compared to 17% in the county. Moving along to conclusions, the executive summary is really the heart of the draft. It really breaks down the conclusions, the recommendations, and the written determinations. I'll just be briefly touching on the conclusions and recommendations, and I'm open to any specific questions on all 3. The conclusions are broken down into 7 key themes. The first being these services, water, fire protection, and community recreation, are the anchor in the affected agencies in the community, and they are really needed to support the county planning in the backcountry. Moving to number 2, which is identified as diseconomies of scale. We have identified in the 4 water districts there is a certain inefficiency among the management versus the taxpayers or the ratepayers, and there's not exactly equilibrium in services and fees, and it may get exponentially worse in the future. This calls for number 5, which may be conversations to consolidations. I have spoken with the water districts personally, and they have mentioned to me before I even said it that they were open to these talks. Going back to number 3, there are very large differences in public engagement. Some of the websites are really hard to find any information, let alone audits. So that is also a key piece in this theme. And then, as Keen mentioned already, the need to touch upon JCFPD in the MSR if this current dissolution does not proceed forward. Number 6 is definitely a piece that is near and dear to my heart. I come from a economic feasibility background as well, so looking at the financial health, all 6 districts have fluctuated very severely in their operations and revenues. At least 1 year, the last 5 years have been in a deficit. Some agencies have had all 5 years in a deficit. Lastly, most agencies do have adequate capacities, going back to the water districts. Most of the time, they do know their annual demand and supply. They are not able to give exactly specific numbers, but they are meeting demands. Okay, and then moving forward to the summary of recommendations. We basically have these recommendations influenced by the determinations as well. As Keen said, we have been using Esri, a proprietary, data set to look at trends and projections. It would be very beneficial for LAFCO to work with the county and SANDAG to look at more specific population build-out for these affected agencies. Number 2, we've touched upon already. Number 3 as well, possible consolidation for the 4 water district. And my next task is to also do the San Diego County Sanitation District MSR, which also has a sewer service area in the Julian region, specifically in their downtown region. So we'll be revisiting this Julian MSR to help us with that one. And then number 5, as I mentioned before, Assembly Bill 2257 regarding public engagement, specifically with board meetings and things like that. It would be very hard for an average citizen to know about these district board meetings, and Senate Bill 92.9 regarding putting their most recent agenda on their homepage. Most districts do not. And then lastly, as of right now, we recommend moving no updates to the spheres of influence. And we are now moving on to discussion and just finishing this conversation up. It has been a long road to this draft, and we welcome as much feedback as you would like, and it has really been all hands on deck from every staff member who has helped with this piece.
Thank you. Questions of staff?
Madam Chair, not a question, but knowing this area, and we can all see on the map how the water districts are pretty spread out, with the exception of the one that's within the Lake Cuyamaca area. I'll be interested to see, what else you find out. I mean, it looks to me like the greatest possibility here would be functional consolidations, not an actual consolidation. But I could be wrong, and maybe the water districts want to do that, but they are very different in how they operate, and they're very different approaches. So it would be good to have some